Greetings. I am Reverend Taiun Michael Elliston, Guiding Director of the Teacher of the Silent Thunder Order and its network of affiliates here in the U.S. and in Canada. The instructional tape subject today, for this tape, is the Doan, which is the person who rings the gongs usually, or Ino, as Matsuoka Roshi called it, the person who is in charge of the Zendo. And as he understood that we were typically going to be in kind of a Lone Ranger situation where you're by yourself, he called this position the Ino because the Ino does this along with taking care of the rest of the Zendo as well. So today's lesson, or instruction, is about how to lead the chanting of the Heart Sutra in English and the Hanya Shingyo in Japanese, and various small details about that Sensei passed on to me and I would like to pass on to you. So to begin, let's just go through the Heart Sutra once in English, and afterwards I will go back and review some of the details of how it was done. So typically, if you have a doshi, which is the leader of the service, if not, we imagine Matsuoka Roshi out there doing the bows. But if you have a doshi, you follow the doshi's timing. And before the service, to begin the service, at the end of the sit, we strike the big gong to let everybody know it's time for them to relax their legs and get up. And we make those announcements as necessary. If everybody in the Zendo is already familiar with the process, it's very important not to make too many announcements, but just to let the gong and drum, clackers and so forth do the signaling and do all the talking. So please minimize your announcements where we have newcomers in the room, people who are unfamiliar with protocols. Then please ask them in a user-friendly way to tell them what to do. So here we are. This is the last bell at the end of the sitting session. If you have only one bell in your Zendo, you use the same bell for all of the signals. But if you have 3, small, medium, and large, then you take the smallest bell, and as the doshi is stepping forward, making a bow in shashu. Shashu is the folded hands type of bow against the chest. You ring the bell twice to let everybody know that the doshi is now entering the room. At that point, everybody has bowed or has been asked to bow to the doshi facing in. And now we ask them to turn facing the altar. As the doshi approaches the mat, makes a bow, and goes to the altar, we pick up the stick for the middle bell. As the doshi goes to the altar with a jisha can be carrying the stick incense for them. They dedicate the incense and the chip incense, one to the Ford, one to Buddha. Then as the doshi makes a bow and it steps back and makes a deep bow, we strike the first gong. The doshi then turns and returns to the mat, and about halfway around the corner, strike the gong again. This begins the roll down. So at this point, the doshi would be at the mat, and if they have a kesa and zabu bowing cloth, they have their bowing cloth out and down on the mat, and we extend that roll down to give them time to do that. Then when they're ready for the first bow, they take over the timing, and you watch their timing. So when the doshi goes down for the first bow, you ring the bell. Second bow. For For these bells, whenever there's a roll down, everybody is invited to join in, bowing with the doshi. The third bow, we have 2 bells. So now the doshi has made the third bow and is standing and begins the chanting of the repentance and refuges. A cappella, no bells, no drum. All my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. I take refuge in Buddha, the fully awakened one. I take refuge in Dharma, the compassionate teaching. I take refuge in Sangha, the harmonious community. I have completely taken refuge in Buddha. I have completely taken refuge in Dharma. I have completely taken refuge in Sangha. At this point, Doan raises the large stick as a reminder to the doshi that it's time to return to the altar again to place incense. The doshi returns to the altar, and this time just places chip incense again, 1 to the 4, 1 to Buddha. And when the doshi steps back, makes a deep bow, we strike the gong. The doshi returns to the mat to begin the 3 doshi-only prostrations bows. If necessary, mention to the audience and the attending members of the Sangha that this is doshi-only bows, so people don't begin bowing with the doshi here. When the doshi is ready and starts to bow, strike the gong again. Second gong, first bow, and in between it's good to gasho, make a little bow. Second bow, third gong. As the doshi is standing for the last bow, starting to go down, we deaden the gong and the drum and chant the title. Heart of Great Perfect Wisdom Sutra. Five May this merit extend universally to all, so that we, together with all beings, realize the Buddha way. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, mahaprajna paramita. That roll down is the signal to all that we're going to do 3 sampai, or treasure bows again, prostrations or standing. Again, following the doshi's timing. Sutra cards are to be passed back before bowing. Not in all cases. In some cases, the sutra cards are to cushions. Second bow. Doshi's third bow. Giving the doshi plenty of time to pick up and fold the bowing cloth. We now do the 4 exit bows. First one, everybody gasho to the altar. Second one, all turn facing in, shashu to doshi, who steps back on each of these. Doshi exits the hall or joins the sangha. And the last one is sangha to sangha. Shashu. Then, a Doan, rises, makes announcements, so forth, and introduces the next event, if it's a Dharma talk for the day, and so forth. So, some of the details that you witnessed there but may not have noticed. The striker for the gong is held at this kind of angle against the gong. It's actually flat against the surface of the gong. The upper part of the gong has a round part, and then there's a flat sort of taper to the edge. The middle of the leather, halfway to the center point, is the point at which you want to strike the gong with this part of the stick. And where the seam overlaps where the leather is thickest, right here, is the striking point of the gong at the edge. The motion is one in which we let the weight of the stick do the striking. If you let the stick sort of float in your hand like so, not too tight so that you're striking with your muscle, nor too loose so that it falls out of your hand, you let the stick rotate back towards you, setting it against the gong first. You can feel it, and especially when you're drumming the drum, it's important. You don't really have to look at the gong, you're following the chant on the sutra card, but you can feel it there. Then you let the stick itself roll back and sort of give it a little bit of a kick with your fingers. So then as it strikes the gong, you lift it away. It's as if you're pulling the sound out of the gong. If you hear, we're not striking down on the gong or a rim shot. You hear the wave in the gong. At this point, I recommend that as soon as you strike the first gong, bend over. Notice how holding the stick in gasho, but so that my hands are not touching the leather. The oil on your hands will gradually soil the leather, and they should be cleaned and replaced from time to time. So this is a way of minimizing that and preserving the integrity of the stick. We bow, we let the sound enter into our head, into our solar plexus, and we can feel the vibration of the gong. And here it's a good idea to start sub-vocalizing or intoning, just harmony with the gong, letting the gong take over. We let the stick roll up of its own, again in the same position. We do not touch the gong this time because it would deaden the gong. But we want to listen to the vibration and strike it in timing with the doshi, but also in timing with the gong. Wow, 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 wow. The next one we want to strike on one of those wows. What this does is amplify the gong. It brings it out louder and louder. You hear more undertones, more overtones, higher tones, lower tones. And then finally we deaden it and begin the chant of the type. Now, that time I struck the drum fairly hard. But the striking of the drum is the same as the striking of the gong in that the stick itself does the work. So what we're doing is actually lifting the stick, letting it fall, and catching it. Just as here, we're pulling the sound out of the gong. We're not striking the gong to make sound. We sort of let the stick do the striking, we pull it away so there's no buzz. Same thing here, we let the stick fall, we catch it so that we don't have a double sound. We simply let the weight of the stick do the drumming. If we want a louder sound, we raise the stick higher, which makes it fall further. It's only at the end when we stop the drum that we apply any pressure or use the thumb to stop the drum. Again, trying not to have just one stop. So let's see. When it comes to the middle gong, can we see the middle gong? The stick, ours is elevated. You can actually strike it the same way as you strike the large gong. Same kind of rolling motion. It's as if the striker stick is sort of diving over, going to dive into the bell. But instead, we pull it back. You can hear the wow. It's a different pitch, higher pitch, smaller gong. And if we strike with the wave of the gong, it continues to reinforce the sound, so you have a good sound rather than a dull sound by striking it at different frequencies where it cancels the wave. We feel the wave, strike along with the gong. So the gong is taking over. This large gong, if you're standing and it's time to strike the gong, you can strike it by hanging the stick inside as we're going to now do the middle gong. Again, halfway down the leather, the stick rests against the side of the gong. We lift it up and let it fall of its own weight and lift it away. Again, to make a louder sound, we lift it higher. But the stroke is the same. If you want a softer sound, we don't lift it very high. So if you're attending and suddenly it's time to strike the gong and you're not in place, and coming back and sitting down will make a lot of noise, you simply walk over to the gong, pick this one up, and strike this gong the same way so that you make the least amount of noise. The gong, especially at the end of a sitting period, should come out of the silence. There should be nothing that broadcasts or signals that we're about to strike the gong. There should be no rustling, no noise of any kind. So that the people sitting facing the wall, all they hear is unexpectedly. So the striking of the gong in silence is meant to help everyone wake up, just like the Kyosaku stick. So let's see if there's anything else. Oh, once you have struck the second gong on 5 aggregates, and the way Matsuoka Roshi said, I has to move, where does it fall? And he said, it's just in there where you feel it. So it doesn't necessarily go on 5, it doesn't necessarily go on ag or gra or guts. It goes somewhere in there where it feels right to you. So as you're chanting along, and once you've struck that gong, clearly saw on the sheet, it's printed out far to the left, so most people strike it just after saw. but actually comes anywhere in that phrase around the 5 aggregates, because that's what it's marking. Clearly saw that all 5 aggregates are empty and thus relieved all suffering. Then we turn the stick over and rest it on our knee, and rest your hand on the stick. This way, because this hand is busy drumming, this hand is at rest. Then when it comes time for this gong to be struck again, after prajnaparamita, with nothing to attain, this is where the signal is. When you see that coming up, with nothing to attain, you raise this to let the doshi know it's about time to go back to the altar for incense. Let's see, with nothing to attain, Bodhisattva relies on prajnaparamita. Thus the mind is. That's the signal for the doshi to go back to the altar. And by the time they have the incense offered and are stepping back, you should be at about the point all Buddhas of past, present, and future rely on prajnaparamita. So instead of trying to strike right on prajnaparamita, the next syllable is going to be and thus the mind. So strike on the and or thereabouts. Prajnaparamita and thereby attains and surpassed enlightenment. But it's important that you are anticipating without thinking too far ahead, because when you think too far ahead, it makes you mess up in the present moment. Anticipate where the next strike is going to be and start lifting the stick well in advance of the strike. And once you have struck that second one, all Buddhas, past, present, future, rely on prajnaparamita, this stick is going to go down. We don't need it. We now need this stick. So go ahead and make that exchange as soon as you can, and then this stick is resting in place where the large stick was resting. So that by the time you get to gatte, you have the stick well in hand. And again, turning on the seam, we lower it into the middle bell as we're playing the drum. Gatte, gatte, para, gatte, para, sam, gatte, bodhisvaha. Now tempo, in the beginning, avalokiteshvara, very slow, especially the first few syllables, very sort of grand or profound, so that the whole audience can hear and catch up with you. If you jump in and start going very fast, you'll leave everybody several syllables behind. So the way you can visualize this, if you are playing a single mokugyo, this drum is called mokugyo, and in large temples where you have a lot of people, and sometimes very large mokugyo, one person will beat the drum and they'll hold the stick with both hands, even a stick this size, but especially a larger stick for a larger drum. And the motion when you're striking with both arms is slightly different. As you can see, the elbows and the linkage causes kind of a circular motion of the stick itself. It's bouncing off the drum away from you and then